shot, wounded, and injured again and again, but every time he returned to the battlefield. A man who lost an eye, lost an arm, survived multiple wars, plane crashes, and some of the most dangerous battles of the 20th century. Many soldiers become legends because of one great moment, but this man became a legend because he simply refused to stop. This is the unbelievable story of Adrian Carton de Wiart, the soldier who seemed impossible to defeat. History remembers famous generals and great commanders, but sometimes the most fascinating stories belong to ordinary soldiers who lived extraordinary lives. Adrian Carton de Wiart was one of those rare people. He was not famous because he wanted attention. He was famous because his life sounded almost impossible. During a time when millions of men experienced the horrors of war, Carton de Wiart seemed to walk through danger and survive situations that would have ended most people's stories. His story is not just about war. It is about courage, determination, and the strange way some people are built to face challenges that others cannot imagine. Adrian Carton de Wiart was born in 1880 in Brussels. From a young age, his life was unusual. He came from a privileged background, but he was never interested in living a quiet and comfortable life. He wanted adventure. He wanted challenges. And eventually, he found himself drawn toward the military. When the First World War began in 1914, Europe entered one of the deadliest conflicts in human history. Millions of soldiers entered the battlefield. Many never returned. Carton de Wiart joined the British Army and was sent to fight. But nobody could have predicted the incredible journey that was about to begin. War was brutal. The battlefield was filled with danger everywhere. Artillery, machine guns, constant attacks. Every soldier knew that survival was never guaranteed. But Carton de Wiart continued moving forward. He believed that leadership meant standing with his men, not hiding behind them. During World War I, he fought in some of the most intense battles, and he was wounded multiple times. But instead of leaving the battlefield forever, he kept coming back. His injuries became part of his legend, not because suffering was something to celebrate, but because his determination was extraordinary. And this was only the beginning, because the battles that would make Adrian Carton de Wiart famous were still ahead. The First World War was unlike anything the world had ever seen. It was a war of trenches, where soldiers spent days and nights surrounded by mud, fear, and constant danger. For many men, simply surviving was an achievement. But Adrian Carton de Wiart seemed to survive things that should have been impossible. His courage was not the type that came from not feeling fear. It came from moving forward despite the danger. During the war, Carton de Wiart served with the British Army in different campaigns, and with every battle his reputation grew. He was the kind of officer who believed that a commander should be seen by his soldiers, not sitting safely far away, but standing beside them when things became difficult. One of the most famous moments of his military career came during the fighting in Belgium. The battlefield was chaos. Enemy fire was constant, and advancing meant moving directly into danger. Carton de Wiart led his men forward. During one attack, he was hit by enemy fire. The injuries were severe, but instead of giving up, he continued to fight. Over time, he collected wounds that would have ended most military careers. He was shot in the leg. He was injured in the shoulder. He suffered wounds that changed his body forever. But every time people expected him to stop, he returned. One of the most remarkable things about Carton de Wiart was his attitude. He rarely talked about his injuries as if they were something extraordinary. To him, they were simply part of the job. This attitude made him both admired and almost unbelievable to those around him. But perhaps the most famous injury of his life happened when he lost his left eye. After being wounded, doctors treated him. Many people would have considered that the end of their active service. But Carton de Wiart was not ready to leave. Instead, he adapted. And then came another incredible moment. During the war, he also lost his left hand. A grenade explosion caused the injury. Doctors had to remove part of his arm. For most people, losing a hand would completely change their future. But for Carton de Wiart, it became another obstacle to overcome. According to stories about his life, he continued to show the same energy and determination. He learned to do things differently. He adapted. He continued leading. And his soldiers respected him because he never asked them to face something he would not face himself. By the end of the First World War, Adrian Carton de Wiart had become one of Britain's most unusual officers. He had survived some of the worst conditions of modern warfare. But history was not finished with him yet, because when the world entered another global conflict, Carton de Wiart was still ready. Many people would have retired after experiencing one world war. After losing an eye, after losing an arm, after years of fighting, they would have chosen a quiet life. But Adrian Carton de Wiart was different. A new war was approaching, and once again, he would find himself at the center of history. By the time World War II began in 1939, Adrian Carton de Wiart was already a veteran of one of the deadliest conflicts in history. Many men of his age would have stepped away from war, but Carton de Wiart was different. He was once again called to serve, and once again he entered a world of danger. At the beginning of World War II, he was sent on missions connected with British military operations in Europe. The situation was changing quickly. Countries were falling, alliances were being tested, and the future of Europe was uncertain. During this period, Carton de Wiart continued to show the same qualities that had defined his career: courage, discipline, and a refusal to surrender. He had already lost parts of his body in the First World War, but he still carried himself like a soldier ready for any challenge. One of the most dramatic chapters of his life came when he became involved in a dangerous mission connected with Poland. He was sent as part of a British military delegation. The mission was risky. The journey itself was dangerous. And while traveling by aircraft, disaster struck. The plane crashed into the sea. Many people would not have survived. But somehow, Carton de Wiart survived yet another life-threatening situation. Even after everything he had already experienced, his story continued. During World War II, he was later captured by Italian forces. For many people, being taken prisoner would mean the end of the fight. But Carton de Wiart was not someone who accepted defeat easily. While held as a prisoner of war, he became involved in escape attempts. The idea of captivity frustrated him. He believed a soldier should always look for a way forward. Eventually, he managed to escape. The details of his escape became another famous part of his extraordinary life. He moved through enemy territory in difficult conditions, with limited resources, trying to reach safety. But what makes this story even more remarkable is not just that he survived. It is the fact that throughout his life, he continued taking responsibility. He continued serving. He continued leading others. Behind the legend, however, there was also a human being. A man who had seen the horrors of war. A man who had lost friends. A man who understood the cost of conflict. Carton de Wiart's story is not about loving war. It is about resilience. It is about facing impossible situations and continuing when others might have stopped. A soldier with one eye. A soldier with one arm. A soldier who had survived decades of conflict. Yet still, he kept going. After surviving 2 world wars, many would think Adrian Carton de Wiart had finally seen enough. But his life after the battlefield was just as interesting, because even after leaving active combat, the legend of the soldier who could not be killed continued. After decades of military service, after 2 world wars, after surviving injuries, battles, and unbelievable situations, Adrian Carton de Wiart finally moved away from the front lines. But his story did not disappear, because some people leave behind more than memories. They leave behind a legend. Throughout his career, Carton de Wiart became known for his incredible toughness. People often described him as a man who seemed impossible to defeat, a soldier who survived what many believed he could not survive. But behind that image was something deeper. He was a man shaped by difficult times. The wars he experienced changed the world forever. He saw destruction. He saw loss. He saw the sacrifices made by ordinary soldiers. And those experiences stayed with him. Many people remember the physical injuries, the lost eye, the lost arm, the wounds. But the biggest challenges of war are not always visible. The memories, the friends who never returned, the moments that stay with you forever. Those are battles that continue long after the fighting ends. What made Carton de Wiart remarkable was not simply that he survived. Many people survive difficult situations. What made him different was his attitude. He adapted, he continued, he refused to let circumstances decide what he could or could not do. His life became an example of resilience, not because he was fearless, but because he kept moving forward. After retiring from military service, Carton de Wiart continued to live an adventurous life. He remained interested in the world around him. He spent time writing about his experiences, and his incredible memories became a window into some of the most important events of the 20th century. When people hear his story today, many struggle to believe it. A man who fought in 2 world wars. A man who survived injuries that changed his life. A man who escaped situations that seemed impossible. But perhaps the most important lesson from his story is this. A hero is not someone who never faces difficulty. A hero is someone who faces difficulty and continues anyway. Adrian Carton de Wiart was not famous because he wanted attention. He became remembered because his life showed extraordinary courage. His story reminds us that history is not only made by famous leaders, it is also shaped by individuals who stand strong when the world becomes uncertain. The world has many forgotten stories, many people whose courage deserves to be remembered. And the soldier who lost an eye, lost an arm, and survived 2 world wars remains one of the most unbelievable examples of determination in history. Sometimes, the greatest heroes are not the ones who are remembered the most. They are the ones who quietly endured the impossible and kept going. If you enjoy discovering forgotten heroes and untold stories from history, subscribe to the channel, because many incredible stories